Welcome to Two Tipsy Plants, the podcast where we talk about plants and drink wine. My name is Sasha.
Sasha always likes to make this part different from, the last time.
Just to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, and my name is Sasha too. Sasha 1, Sasha 2.
Sasha 1 and Sasha 2. Whichever is number 1 depends on a day.
Yes, whoever is a bit more fresh.
So yeah, today we're going to have a very interesting conversation, I think. I really enjoyed the topic that we have chosen for today. Let me...
Did you feel like you're playing a bit of an investigator? Like a...
Well, I was kind of feeling myself.
I'm feeling myself.
I was feeling like I'm playing the board game where we're just like a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. I mean, we can try to be like that. But yeah, let me just set the mood.
Mm-hmm.
What if I told you that a single blade of grass or a cottonwood tree could help catch a murder or track a toxic chemical underground? Plants are more than passive organisms. They can reveal pollution, expose crimes, and track environmental change, and so much more. Welcome to the Phytoforensics with Sasha and Sasha.
A phytoforensics. Sasha Phyto... Two Sasha Phytoforensics? I don't know, I'm trying to come up with some funny name, but no.
Yep.
Brain is not braining.
But yeah, the phytoforensics, for people who don't know, and so you know...
Wait, stop it! Excuse you.
Okay, you can do it.
No?
What?
You're forgetting the most important part.
Well, first I want to introduce the topic, and then I will do the important part.
Okay. Maybe... No, I need the wine for it.
I need the wine for this shit.
I'm like, hold your horses, wine first. Sasha.
What is the wine
What is the poison of the choice today?
Well, hopefully not the poison with this topic.
I'll show it.
There we go.
Today, yeah, we're recording on my iPhone today with a really funky contraption with an external drive, so hopefully that looks good.
Give me a second.
A bit of photo session.
Photo session in terms of recession?
So yeah, this is what we're having today for those who are watching.
Mm-hmm. So we're having a Bogle Vineyard wine, which is old wine Zinfandel.
Is it Bogle or Bogle?
Bogle. I think it's Bogle.
It's not New Zealand.
No, it's not at California.
I thought you said New Zealand. Sorry.
So it's from California. Vintage is 2021. That particular vintage is... Oh my gosh, I changed.
Zinfandel.
So that particular vintage is characterized by warm days and tempered by warm days that are tempered by cool breezes from nearby rivers and the San Francisco Bay.
San Francisco.
The temperature variations allow grapes to ripen fully while retaining acidity, creating depth and balance in the final wine. So yeah, the main grape in this wine is Zinfandel. Zinfandel is typically quite a light one. Doesn't have too much heat, but also considering that it's California and the temperatures are quite high in there, we can expect a lot of alcohol in there. It's like 14.5.
14 and a half, yeah, but it also says that it's actually unusually rich.
Oh yeah.
For Zinfandel. Flavors of blackberry, black cherry, and raspberry wrapped in a smooth blanket of vanilla and oak.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I like. Not raspberries that much, but like cherries and, blackberries and vanilla and oak.
It's been barrel aged for 12 months in American oak. American oak is very different to French oak. And if you don't like the flavor, like there are three types of Chardonnay that you will. So why knowing what kind of oak your wine is aged in is important, because if you age it in French oak, especially if it's a fresh French oak, you'll have one of those flavors which is more like sorry. There we go.
That was a very funny like it wasn't, satisfying. It was like
You will have the flavors like very smoky, gunpowdery, reductive. If you will use American oak, It will definitely give you more prominent flavors of vanilla, more prominent caramel. It's going to be very rich, almost sweet.
Do I look like a boomer filming on my iPad?
You know, you do. I also don't see your face because it's iPad. It can be anybody.
Well, I'm filming the whole podcast on my phone. Actually, I'll quickly check that it's filming.
You might also give me your glove.
It was there. I gave you 2. First mystery, the lost glass.
Bum, bum, bum.
Strong. Checking that it's working.
Ooh. There we go.
Yes. We're also having, this is the second day of a long weekend, because it's Easter tomorrow, so Good Friday was a day off, and
it was a Good Friday.
It was a very lazy Friday because we had a rainy day. Nothing works on a Good Friday. So yeah, it was a very good lazy day. But then, yeah, we still have 2 more days to go. That's nice.
What do you smell? Come on.
He started like
Be a proper sommelier.
I definitely smell
sommelier
oak.
in training.
Definitely oak.
Woodiness, dustiness. It's not the glass. Spice.
Spice and cherries, definitely.
It's like you know how when you open not the cinnamon powder, but cinnamon sticks.
Yeah.
How that smells like. It smells like wood and cinnamon. So that. A clove.
You know, I'm not a big fan of Zinfandels, but this is nice.
Mm-hmm. I wonder why don't you like Zinfandels?
I don't know.
Most of the Zinfandels that I've tried are from California. And if it's from Italia, it's called Primitivo.
Yeah,
Same
I know,
grape.
but obviously they're still, I mean, depending on the vineyard, right? They're different. It's like Sav, so different. But this one is not bad. I like it. It's strong though.
Oh, it is strong.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel it really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Another percent, and it will be a fortified wine.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, on the website they describe it as prominent flavors of raspberries, peppercorn, juniper, dried herbs, and vanilla. Dried herbs or dried herbs?
Herbs.
Herbs. Okay.
You speak like you lived in America.
America. America is the best place. Nobody does the wine better than we do.
Honestly, that's like a mix between Trump and Jennifer Coolidge.
That makes me want Zinfandel real bad. Oh, God. So, yeah. So, phytoforensics. Can I now tell you what is phytoforensics?
Sure.
So, the phytoforensics is the use of plants or plant parts, plant products. It's like a combination of science and investigation. So you use the plant parts as in pollen or leaf litter or anything that you can find that is connected to a plant and
disconnected from
a plant and relate that information to the what is happening in real life.
So, phytoforensic and forensic botany, is that the same? Phytoforensis and forensic botany, is that the same?
I would say so.
Okay.
So yeah, today episode will explore at least 5 ways plants help us uncover hidden stories. From crime scenes in Australia to bone fields in Aotearoa. Today we are also digging into the green detectives of the natural world. We are trying to imagine ourselves as the green detectives of the natural world.
I don't know. I don't know if green detectives. That's the trouble.
You haven't even drunk yet.
Shut up. I'm gonna just shut up.
We're not licensed to be a detective.
But green detective, is there such a license? Okay. So, give us some examples of. I guess you can start with one case, but give us an example of how that forensic botany botanical forensic, but
Phytoforensics.
phytoforensics helped to solve that problem. Yeah, so you can.
So start with the case.
Okay.
Well, should I start with a crime case or just legal?
Up to you.
I think I would go a bit more mild, less dark route to start us off.
Okay, let's start. Yeah, let's start. The more wine we have, the darker we get.
Yeah, just like this wine. Yeah, just because after all the research, I have realized it's going to get a little bit dark, a little bit too quick. So let's start with something a bit light, with legislation and regulations, because that's the lightest thing you can find. So yeah, the first case I would call a tree snitch. So that would be a tree core sampling. That's how you would use it. Some trees act like a groundwater well, and they would absorb the contaminated water from the groundwater.
Okay, yeah.
From the aquifer. Such trees that are typically used for core sampling are cottonwoods, poplars, and willows, just because they transfer their sap quite quickly and they're quite easy to drill into as well.
Okay.
They naturally draw up the groundwater through their roots, just like all the other trees. And if the groundwater is contaminated, you can send that sample of the tree sap or the core itself and try to identify things. Typical use for that will be the TCE and PCE, which is the trichloroethylene and the perchloroethylene, which are also known as tetrachlorethylenes. Both chlorinated solvents that are widely used in industrial applications and include dry cleaning or metal degreasing, and both are linked to cancer.
So carcinogenics.
Carcinogenics, yes. So yeah, you can just that is the one way to identify if your groundwater is contaminated, and that's one of the consent conditions, for example, in Canterbury even. And why this is a good thing to do? You don't always have access to our groundwater.
So you use. So what you're saying is you
instead of groundwater sampling, because creating a well or a bore is expensive. It's like thousands of dollars in high 20s. But instead of that, you, as a pre-investigation, you can do the core sample.
Okay. And then the core sample will show you
if there is any traces of something that you should be worried about.
That's actually that's a good way. So do they patch it up, or does the tree just grow?
The tree usually the core samples is. Have you ever seen the apple corers?
Yeah.
Yeah, same size. So for the massive tree, it's usually
small incision.
Yeah, not an incision. You literally drill in and take out the whole kind of cork. But yeah, it's not too big, and I think they fill it up with wax or something like that,
so that insects don't get in and all
that.
So
the insects don't get in. The bigger issue would be a pathogen, because trees can still transmit viruses and bacterial diseases. So that will kill it quicker than insects.
Yep.
Yeah, and usually this kind of scenario is used for the sites that are under development, like industrial sites, or the sites that were used for the old dry cleaners. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess you can also. So this is kind of crimes as well. Like, if you're if a factory is releasing chemicals that they are not supposed to release, and you can find that out through, like, not just groundwaters, but through the plants that are growing around it. I guess that's kind of crime solving as well.
Well, the other good reason why it's better sometimes than using groundwater sample. Legislations change all the time. Not always. People have been monitoring like the contaminants, like the trichlorides that I have mentioned before, and it will remain in the tree, and it will be like a historical data. Whereas groundwater always changing. Like, groundwater has its flow, and it will not retain for as long. Yes, it has like. Sometimes it takes around 50 years for depending on what aquifer we're talking about. It may take up to 50 years for that pollution to get to that depth where you're sampling. but still eventually it will go out.
Mm.
So if you have your tree and you have taken a core sample, that will be an indicator if there was something happening on site prior.
Cool. Do you need some water? You sound a bit...
Nah, I'm good.
Okay.
Maybe just too excited.
There's a doggy. We have 3 dogs in the house today. We are also not in one of our houses. We are in a friend's house, and there are 2 dogs that they own, and obviously Rosie's here. And I decided to leave Bolto at home because 4 dogs would be too much for Sasha's partner to take care of while we are recording. But Rosie's sniffing under the door, so if you hear the sniffies, that's Rosie. Okay, so that's testing through chemical analysis, call it that way, right? Okay. I'll give you one example. Have you ever... So, both of us have researched a couple of actual criminal cases where plants helped solve the cases. Do you know what was the first actual recorded case of the DNA data plant?
Well, the oldest I have on my list is 1959.
I mean with DNA, using the DNA of the plant.
Oh, no.
So not actually, using plants, but the DNA testing. So sometimes what they do is they would use because obviously your plants can have, if you have 10 different Acer palmatum, which is a type of maple, right?
Yep.
If you have 10 of them in 10 different locations, they would be similar, but they will never be identical. So you can do a DNA testing to find if, let's say you have 10 different seed pods from 10 trees, you can do DNA testing to find which tree that particular seed belongs to. So the first case that has ever utilized that was a criminal case in Arizona in 1992. It was called Arizona versus Bogle. Well, I guess, the state of Arizona versus Bogle. Actually Bogle. Okay.
Not Bogle, but Bogle.
Bogle, yep. In which a young woman was murdered and her body dumped in the desert. The suspect was taken into custody after his pager was found near the site. However, the investigating team noticed that one of... So I'm guessing he... I can't actually see that here, but I'm guessing he pleaded not guilty. But the investigating team noticed that one of the Palo Verde trees at the scene was freshly scraped. So the investigator picked some seed pods hanging from the tree and later found the same kind of seed pods in the open truck bed of Bogle's truck. And then Dr. Tim Helentiaris, I apologize if I pronounced it wrongly, a genetics at University of Arizona, he used RAPD, rapid...
Yeah.
Something.
Rapid analysis.
Yeah. To produce profiles of visualized DNA fragments. So pretty much what he was trying to do is to make sure that the seeds from the tree that was on the scene where there were scrapes, where potentially the victim was either murdered or, I don't know, struggled there, that those seeds were the same seeds as were found in Bogle's truck. Bogle's truck. It's just sorry.
That brings me back. We used to do that, the rapid test. That's just DNA gel electrophoresis. So you would just put your samples into the agar gel, and it has a certain density in it. So you would put electrical current through the gel, and based on that, your DNA sample, which is already purified and pre-prepared, has certain polarity for each of the types of DNA parts. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
In it, and it will go through the sheet, agar gel sheet, and it will show you the bands.
Okay.
And those bands represent what is the concentrations of the adenine, guanine, thymine, parts of DNA.
So I guess if you do that for 2 identical samples,
it will be the same essentially the same barcode.
Yeah, the bands should be the same. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the those Palo Verde trees, excuse me, they had an exceptionally high degree of intraspecific genetic variation, which allowed for identification of the specific tree at the crime scene. The jurors found Bogle guilty of first-degree murder based on the findings, the DNA plant sampling findings, which is very good. I think it's obviously some people think that they're clever, but nature is cleverer. So yeah, this is one example of how they use DNA plant testing to match the two, like the scene of the crime and the actual evidence that they find on the culprit or alleged culprit. And yeah, they present it as evidence at court. So
that is cool.
That's good, yeah.
It's a cool way of seeing how the science and investigation work together.
And plants and nature. I just like the fact that nature is like, fuck you,
going getting away from me.
Yep.
Awesome. Is that it?
For this case, yes.
All right. So the case number 3, phytoscreening at brownfield sites. So besides the plastics or the other things that the other toxins that we can try to monitor with plants will be hydrocarbons. Typical hydrocarbons will be the volatile organic compounds or the petroleum hydrocarbons. So if there was a spill in the area of some sort, like the machine oil or fuel or some other oily substance have been spilled in the area, the plant's analysis will show you that something have happened and this soil is potentially contaminated. So trees, shrubs growing in the brownfields. The brownfields are the lands that are potentially contaminated. Possibly polluted land, can show uptake of contaminants like diesel, petrol, and oil. It's used in site assessment, redevelopment, during the redevelopment of the brownfields.
So how do they? What do they do to test it? Do they take the plant?
They essentially test every part of the plant because different parts of the plant accumulate different types of contaminants.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's like in humans. You know, your liver contaminates.
Yeah.
One type of contaminant. Accumulates one type of contaminant.
Your brain
kidneys,
and your liver will accumulate most of the metals. Have you seen recently that people with dementia have people with dementia who have passed away recently have consented to being opened up? Let's call it that way. People have found out that ever since 50 years ago, the number of plastic in our brain have increased, and now we can expect up to a tablespoon of plastic in our brain.
Like microplastics.
Microplastics. Yeah. And that...
I'm not surprised.
And that usually is accumulated in our front cortex, which is responsible for our processing, understanding, emotion. So...
Are you saying that microplastics might be causing dementia? That's terrifying.
So what... The ways to get around it, not to eat anything that is in contact with plastic, which... Fuck, everything is in contact with plastic these days. Your food
this
all of your produce is in plastic. Yeah, can't get away from it. Even if you grow it at home, at some point you will use plastic.
Well, the soil that you sometimes buy, if you're buying the soil, that comes in plastic bags, usually.
Yep,
no, we're screwed.
Where was I?
You were talking about the leaks. If there were leaks and...
yeah. So yeah, the phytoscreening is essentially a very eco-friendly screening method. It's efficient, and it helps developers avoid unnecessary excavations and helps regulators to focus on actual risks.
Nice.
Yeah, because excavating the thing, like the site, comes with the other risks. Like you are changing the topography of the area. You will need to do the sediment control. You will need to figure out where you're going to be dumping the soil if it is contaminated.
You probably need more
more consents.
Approvals, consents, and all that jazz, yeah.
So yeah, this is a quick and easy way of doing a pre-assessment of the site.
Cool. Do you have any more non-criminal cases?
Yeah.
Let's go through them first, and then we get darker.
Get darker very quickly. The other one that I'm using at my work as well is the wetland delineation. So what that means, you are trying to understand if the place that you are at the moment, the site for development, is actually a wetland. And that
it used to be a wetland, or is
used to be a wetland, is a wetland, or is an intermediate wetland.
In terms of, so if it's relatively dry visually, you're trying to find out if that actually has potential to
be a wetland, or if it is a seasonal wetland.
So like do like a detention wetland sort of situation, or
no, just to see if it is a wetland, if it's a seasonal wetland, if it's not a wetland, or if it's a wetland. Because in New Zealand you can't touch wetlands.
Well, you know how so in Christchurch there are maps called, actually I don't know if it's just Christchurch or New Zealand wide, sorry.
Should be New Zealand wide.
Black maps, which are like the original maps of New Zealand, and a lot of, like, let's say the whole Christchurch used to be a wetland
that got drained at some point.
But the trouble is, because if you drain wetlands and build a concrete jungle over it, not that Christchurch is a concrete jungle, but there's still more concrete than there used to be, you are losing so much of water permeability and water storage that, that water has to go somewhere. So we get floods when, there is a higher rain event. We get floods because we drained all of our wetlands that act as sponges. There's actually a really cool concept called city sponges, where they pretty much build cities with the ability to hold water, and also you use that space as your communal areas for people and stuff. Yeah, but we're not quite there yet, not worldwide.
We do the design of constructed wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, we also do constructed wetlands, but it's a shame that we have
You're probably doing it from a different perspective. You're doing it from what plants are gonna go there and what is the shape and how this can be utilized for the public access. We are doing it from the point of how will it actually work hydraulically.
I understand that, and this is why on projects like that you have multiple disciplines to actually work together to build, a perfect outcome. Yeah.
Okay, so wetlands host obligate species, which obligate species are an organisms that is absolutely dependent on a particular environment, relationships, or conditions for survival. These species act as bioindicators. Their presence confirms the wetland conditions. It is so usually this kind of assessment is other things for this assessment is considering if the soil is hydric and and identifying what is the hydrology of the surrounding area. So identifying the close by streams, rivers, ponds, potential, and if based on the topography of the area, it can be a potential accumulation point for the water, also known as wetland. Combination of all those kind of points will help you legally determine if this place is considered a wetland. And typical plants that are considered a wetland indicators are Carex sector, that's for the New Zealand.
Yep.
Also known as Pukio.
Oh, just sedge as well, yeah.
Belmea articulata, across the water margins. Juncus gregiflorus, Juncus pallidis, which are the rushes.
Yeah, it's just very thin, sort of dark blue rushes, dark
Raupo.
green. Yep, Raupo.
Type Tufa orientalis. Tufa orientalis. I guess that's the scientific name for that.
I think it's a tree.
Raupo?
Oh, Raupo, yeah. Yeah. I actually did not know its botanical name, sorry. I just know that it's Raupo.
It is a classic sign of a shallow standing water.
What is it called in English? Raupo.
I don't know. Let's quickly Google.
Как сосиска называется? Камыш.
Cattail
Cattail or something like that?
Cattail?
Because raupo is kamush, just a different type of it. Pause. Because both of us are brain farting majorly. Gosh, what is it called? Cat. You know those plants that look like the wetland plants that are rushes, well, not rushes, they are leafy plants with like a sausage seed pod, and if you bite into it, it like becomes.
Don't bite into it. I think we actually talked about it on a previous episode, and I was like, don't bite into it. Bulrush.
Bulrush, but there's also another name, right? Cat something.
Yeah, like cat tail or something like that.
Yeah.
Cat's tail, it is.
Oh, it is cat's tail. Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Or also kambangai. Whatever that is.
Or kamush.
Or kamish in Russian. I would also probably include the paratingifa, which is like one of the plants that I see all the time in the very damp areas.
What's the scientific name for it?
Paratingifa. Elastostema rugosum.
Oh, okay. It's like a creeper, ground creeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last time I was with newbies in the out and around. People have referred it to as tinifa instead of the paratingifa, which tinifa is actually just a river dragon, and paratingifa is a plant.
Okay.
So they're like, there is a river dragon growing everywhere.
There's also, I guess, Tikoka would be one of the cabbage tree would be one of the indicators. Even though they also grow in dry, but they love wetlands.
I don't think it would be the main indicator. Yeah. Like it can grow anywhere, whereas this ones need something that is a stagnant, shallow water.
Well, let's say we have one project that we are a part of. There's like a council wetland, and it kind of drains into, I don't know which one drains into which one, but like they are connected.
Mm-hmm.
And before we actually planted out our part of the land, well, not our, but our clients, there was a lot of raupo there, like just a lot, and that's obviously an indicator this is the wettest area in the whole site. Yeah. All right. You have any other non?
So my last case for the environmental monitoring kind of streams from the previous case, which was the wetland delineation.
Mm-hmm.
After that, usually, if somebody have decided to do a bad thing and have done wetland modification without your consent, you need to be able to see the damage and monitor how it regenerates over time.
Okay.
So, plant communities change with water levels and human activity, so they tell us how restoration is going. So, based on that, we can see we can see how the plants in the area respond to the adjustments. Like if you're trying to restore the wetland and you're not artificially planting the stuff, you can try to see like what plant species are coming back. Plus, you can also identify what other, like, whether it's one wetland, there is usually smaller wetlands all around. So you can always go there and identify what kind of plants growing in there, and you can try to see if it's coming back in that area as well. Just one of the ways of natural regeneration. But also doing as other things to restore the wetland, you can do the riparian planting, which is a typical thing to do along the banks of the rivers.
It's like a water margin planting, pretty much. Yeah.
Retired paddocks, that's also a good thing to do. Like when you know that paddock that have been used for hundreds of years for your cattle or sheep or whatever, used as pasture or as the crop thing, just it gets retired, turned into the wetland. If that paddock is in the correct topography. So yeah, we track the success of the regeneration of the site by which species return. The regeneration signs include the return of the carex, Schwanus.
What?
No, carex.
Oh.
Schwanus. Jonas.
I don't know that one.
Juncus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Native sages and rushes. Decline in pasture grasses, which, yeah, hopefully it would. And appearance of native like Manuka, Caprosma, cordyline, cabbage trees. Manuka. And hydrological shifts is another sign of the regeneration of the site. It's like drying or rewetting of the wetland. Also reflected in dominant. Also helps the drying or rewetting of the wetland that has been regenerated is also reflected in what species are going to be in the area. From sages to grasses, the shift from sages to grasses will mean that your site is drying, and the shift from otherwise it's rewetting, like from willows to rapa or the Eliocaris. I know that one.
I don't know all the plants. Like, I know all the garden plants.
Well, I'm just like one of those people, like, oh, I know that gay guy. You definitely know him, right? Because you're also gay. Like, no.
Oh, you must know that plant because you are a landscape architect.
Yeah.
Hey.
You are Russian. I have known a Russian guy like 20 years ago. You probably know each other. I'm like, no, we don't.
Yep.
So yeah, vegetation is a natural monitoring tool, and it helps to measure restoration success without expensive sensors. The end. Now, let's go into the gruesome part.
Well, not gruesome, but a bit more relatable for more people part, I guess, in terms of because people like crime stories. And
yeah, a bit more intriguing because, let's be honest, NCI or CSI TV series are quite popular on streaming platforms.
What's the other one? The Law and Order and all the true crime podcasts.
iZombie.
Yeah, iZombie. Yeah. So speaking of water,
Lucifer.
I haven't watched Lucifer. Come on, finish yours and top me up.
Top me up.
So top me up when it's not over.
Are you drying out?
Yes.
Do you need to get re-wetted?
I need to get rewind. Speaking of plants and wetlands and sort of wet conditions, plants, wetness, water, moisture. What are other synonyms? Speaking of that, I actually don't have, I've written this down, but for some stupid reason I didn't take note of where this happened and when this happened, but there was this case where a wife was actually murdered by her husband in their home, and
we might need to do the disclaimer, the following podcast may include the rough language.
Well, yeah, the following information might be a bit, because obviously we are going to talk about true crime. So...
I mean, we have already said a couple of times the word murder before that. So
yeah, no, it's not that. I'm just saying that some of the parts could be disturbing for you, so please keep in mind. We'll try our best to make it as PG as possible, but just saying.
I'm sorry, guys, but crimes are not PG usually.
Yeah. So, yeah. Apparently... So yeah, young wife was murdered and the husband was the suspect. Investigators found some plant material and abrasions on the victim's body and clothes. So the husband initially claimed that his wife was found on the sofa, but then he changed his story when the plant material matched vegetation in the driveway. So suddenly she was found in the garden. There was a brick that they found near the freshwater pond.
How did she get into the garden? Why did she die in a garden?
Well, I don't know. It's a very short story, but I just thought I'll cover that because it's very related to your...
Did he kill her with a brick in the garden?
Did you read this?
No, you just said the brick, garden, and everything.
Okay, no. A brick was found near the freshwater pond and was identified with hair and tissue from the victim. But also, they found on the husband's t-shirt, it was analyzed, and the algae specimen on the clothes that they found on him was actually matching the pond. So that suggested that
he was in that area.
He was in that area, and that, the victim was actually probably murdered there. So it kind of linked it all together to the husband.
So yeah, I was wanting to say that. Give me a second. I have a.
I guess that's another case of DNA matching.
So just wanted to put it out there. The phytoforensics is in nature. It's in its nature is circumstantial and often cannot be used on its own to convict the person.
Absolutely.
It is more to kind of
support
the evidence. It is never used as the main evidence.
I don't think it's just strong enough to be used as the main evidence. So usually they use it to support other evidence. Like, let's say in this case, it was the evidence of the fact that the husband was there at the point where the murder weapon was found.
He was kind of omitting some of the facts in his stories. The story changed several times, and just by finding the algae species on that shirt, you're like, okay, so that story most probably is the correct one.
I still don't get how you can tell one story first and then the other. They say, oh, he was like nervous and stuff. No. Okay. Anyway, let's get local, Sasha.
Yeah.
Maybe you tell that story, because we somehow found that we've actually researched the same story.
Well, because it's the story related to New Zealand and it's relatively fresh.
And Christchurch.
It's Christchurch. It's relatively fresh. It's 20 years old, but still fresh. The story would be called probably Hypericum pollen burglary.
Do you know what Hypericum is?
Is it Hyperastrum?
No. Hypericum and Hyperastrum, that's two different botanical names.
Agapanthus?
No, Hypericum is St. John's wort.
Oh, yeah, St. John's wort, yeah.
It's like a yellow, fluffy flower, which is high in pollen.
Okay.
Wink, wink, hint, hint.
So yeah, the abstract of this topic, let's call it that. The pollen grains stick to everything and can link people to specific locations, even years later.
Okay.
Yeah. So the backstory, what happened actually on site? 2 male intruders entered the house in which the sole female occupant slept, having left the back door unlocked for the return of her live-in boyfriend.
Also, keep in mind that back in the day, like, people just
This is not back in the day, 2005.
Yeah, I know, but like pretty much pre-earthquakes, people used to not lock the doors because the community was relatively
safer.
Safe.
Yeah. A bit more trustworthy, I think. So yeah, she left the door open for her state house boyfriend.
For her boyfriend to come back.
Boyfriend to come back. Thank you very much. She awoke and saw a stranger in the bedroom. The intruders, there were 2 guys, ran off, and one had left the jacket behind on the kitchen floor. One of the intruders subsequently returned to recover his jacket, but in his rush to leave the house, he brushed against the flowering Hypericum bush, growing just outside the back door. A suspect was arrested later that day and charged with incident assault of a female and a burglary.
Thievery.
Yeah, thievery. Жулик, не воруй. But denied any involvement and refused to name any associates. A day following the offense, the suspect's clothes were taken for forensics examination. The pollen analysis of the selected parts of his clothes showed that his track pants contained 14% of Hypericum pollen, denim jacket had 24%, and a polo shirt had 27%. These kind of percentages would only mean that he was intimately close with the bush. Most of these pollen grains still had their cells content preserved and were on the clothing and clumps consistent with having recently... So basically, it was still fresh. It was because the pollen have not degraded. It was in high concentrations, which indicates that it got onto his clothes not because of the dispersal through air, as the pollen, as people with hay fever know, flies everywhere, but that was because of direct contact.
I guess it also depends on how mature the pollen is, right? Because sometimes...
So yeah, also depends on the maturation of the
Yeah.
pollen. So you can compare the plant that is growing in the suspect's garden, for example, and what you have found on the jacket. And you can, okay, so this is approximately the same stage of development of the pollen. So yeah, the Hypericum bush was identical in color, shape, development, and size of the pollen from the clothing. The clothes had so much Hypericum pollen. Yes, he was brushing on the bush. Maybe he was very into it. Pollen evidence is
intimate.
He was very intimate with it. And yeah, that kind of tied him to the crime scene.
Yeah.
He was convicted before that, but that just kind of...
It supported the evidence, I'm guessing, yeah. Well, I guess it does take quite a while to actually test it all out. Yeah. I'll tell you another case that is also from New Zealand, from Christchurch, believe it or not, where a pollen was used to support the evidence. So, again, for some really stupid reason, I didn't take the year down, but I think this one happened... Oh, no, there you go, 1997. I did. So, the crime occurred in Christchurch, where we are, in 1997, where a young woman was grabbed, pulled into an alleyway, and raped. I'm going to use slightly different language. The suspect was arrested shortly after the crime. She had a bottle of wine? Yes, she was raped. Yes, with wine.
No.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Okay, not joking there. But anyway, the suspect, it's not a funny topic, so yeah, apologies. The suspect was arrested shortly after the crime, but claimed he was not in the alleyway. The police noted dirty stains on his clothes, which he claimed came from his yard where he was working on his car. No, bitch. The alleyway was lined with low-flowering shrubs of wormwood, Artemisia arborescens.
What is wormwood used for? I can't remember. Is it like a tea?
No. We discussed it in one of our episodes.
Not the Harry Potter one.
No. Well, I mean, obviously the Harry Potter one, but it was also in the booze, the plants that make booze.
True. Was it used instead of hops?
No. The drink also starts with an A, just like the
Ale?
Artemisia. No.
Alcohol?
No.
Absinthe.
Yes. Da-da-da-da-ding! Bingo! Yes, Artemisia arborescens or wormwood is also used to make absinthe. Yep. So anyway, the alleyway was all full of that. And the shrubs were broken and flattened during the struggle that led up to the events. The suspect's clothes and comparative sample of soil from the crime scene were sent to the Forensic Palynology Laboratory of the New Zealand Geological Survey for analysis. The soil sample was dominated by Artemisia pollen, about 77%, occurring in clumps, indicating that source was at the scene. What?
Yeah, continue, you're correct.
Okay. The pollen of this genus has a distinctive echinate, like a spiny, very thick walled exine. There was a mix of fresh and older, darker colored grains, as well as an unusually large, thick-walled fungal spore in the soil sample. So there's another player that comes in. So it wasn't just the Artemisia, the wormwood, but also fungal spores. The same Artemisia pollen dominated in the clothing sample, 53%, occurring mainly in clumps in a mix of fresh and older grains. And the same thick-walled fungal spore was abundant. The percentage of Artemisia was so high that the only explanation was that the clothing was indirect, very intimate contact with the actual plant.
What is it with people who are committing crimes and rubbing on the trees and bushes?
I don't think they think about it.
They're just in a moment.
Yeah. So, just to make sure that the suspect's story of him working on his car and his garden wasn't true, because he claimed that dirt came from there, They went to his place and obviously looked around and couldn't find any wormwood in his garden. Also, the species is not common in New Zealand, and that is correct. It's usually used as a decorative plant in New Zealand because it is quite a pretty sort of tall, fluffy, almost grayish plant, like a blue, sort of blue-gray. Yeah, as it says here, being occasionally planted
Looks
in
like
gardens.
a silvery smoky parsley.
Yeah. You can buy it in like garden centers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there's another name for it as well. Not wormwood, but like another cineraria? No, I think it's a different kind.
Artemisia absinthium.
Oh, maybe you're right. Actually, maybe it's the absinthium that's used for absinthe. This one is Artemisia arborescens. Anyway, it's a type of Artemisia that's used in absinthe. Yeah, and the fungal spores that were found on him were quite rare as well. So what they also did, the forensic laboratory had processed over 1,000 pollen samples from many locations in New Zealand and never found Artemisia in more than a trace amount. So the chances of finding large amounts were statistically 1 in 1,000, but in actual fact, chances were certainly much lower. So what they're trying to say here is that unless he actually rolled in Artemisia somewhere, there's no way that he could have had that much pollen on him. So
he was well pollinated.
Yeah.
He was imagining himself as a bumblebee.
Yeah. This pollen and spore evidence was presented at the trial, and the suspect was convicted and given an 8-year prison sentence. That's too little for
murder.
No, that wasn't for murder.
For the grape. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
even the wine stays in a cellar longer than he did.
That he stays in the cell. Yeah. So yeah, like using so again that's DNA sampling, right? They matched that particular pollen to that particular location, and also the fact that they did a test to make sure that he didn't just walk through Artemisia somewhere. They did a test to make sure that it actually proves that he pretty much rolled in Artemisia. Yeah. Again, another case from New Zealand, from Christchurch, which is surprising that, it's quite I guess forensic botany is quite a useful tool in New Zealand.
How long is our timer?
50 something.
Okay,
we've got some time.
I have my last case.
Mm-hmm.
So this murder case have happened in Australia, 1959. I didn't dig too much into it. It's a very shallow case. So a man have vanished near Danube River. No body have been found and no witnesses, only muddy boots. The paleontologist is the person who is analyzing the pollen samples.
Okay.
Dr. Wilhelm Klaus finds a modern pollen from spruce, elder, and willow, and the ancient pollen from the ancient Miocene hickory pollen. The only location where this mix exists is a spot near the exposed fossil sediments along the Danube. Confronted with the evidence, the suspect confessed and led police to the exact site. So, just by having all the data that you have, like this is why I think having data accessible and finally compiled across different categories is really important.
So it just sounds like you are explaining why your job is so important, because I know you do a lot of data recording and data storage.
Yeah, but literally the thing is that like combining these 2 points of like the modern pollen of those 3 species per se and the ancient pollen of a hickory plant that can be only identified for this region, that is a really big indicator.
I'm just surprised it was done in like 1950s.
I know. So yeah, and after this presented evidence, the guy cracked and he have led the investigation to the place where the guy was found.
Cool.
This was the first documented use of the forensic palynology. Pollen can't be faked, actually. It links people to a very specific places, and it shows how botany can tip the scales in cold cases.
Made me think. For those who are from Christchurch and from New Zealand, you probably know about the Yan Bao case, the real estate agent that was. Sorry, is it Yan? Apologies if I am mistaken with the name. Gosh, I can't remember the full name, but the real estate agent of the Chinese origin. She was. She was.
I am already feeling that I'm familiar with the story, but continue.
So she disappeared in July last year, and they couldn't find her. They found some evidence that like there was a guy involved, and then they arrested him, but they couldn't find her for like a year. So obviously they found evidence that there was a murder, and they found evidence that this guy was probably the culprit.
But there was no body.
There was no body, and makes me wonder if because they found dirt in his boot, makes me wonder if they actually used a bit of forensic.
My gosh, what is the word? Palynologist.
Yes, so if they used that to analyze the dirt and try to find where it was from, maybe that could have sped up the progress. Because eventually, yeah, they had to they couldn't crack up your phone password. They had only one chance, and they did. It was pretty much her daughter's birthday, but in reverse. And then they managed to get in, and then they found that she was
wait, it was her daughter's birthday, but in reverse.
Yeah.
What does it mean in reverse?
The numbers are in reverse. Like, let's say if it's 0294,
I see.
It was, I don't know, 4920 or something like that. Yeah. And then through that they found they used Apple Tracker and found like where she walked 100 steps, because it was the guy dragging her, and this is how they found where she is. But that took them a year, because they obviously had only one chance to open the phone, because they tried other ways before the phone completely locks up.
Plus, it's really hard to get into the Apple records.
Well, that's the thing. Like, they couldn't unlock the freaking phone.
I mean, they could try to reach out to Apple with their.
I don't know how it works, honestly. Probably, but yeah. But yeah, and it makes me wonder if they actually used a bit of plant science. Maybe they could have found her a bit earlier. But again, it's just me speculating. I don't know the whole story. Yeah. I'll tell you one small case. I've got a few, but I think we'll just finish there. And then
one very gory case?
No, I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want that?
Nah. And then I'll tell you one that is actually very recent, and the trial is going to start this month. And then I just want to recap on how forensic botany may help solve crimes. There are like some points that are different ones, because we didn't cover all the... That's not really a case, but this is more of like trying to identify something, right? So this is a... it's not really like a criminal case. It's more something that, they found like a mass grave in Germany in 1994, and the skeletons, they were shot in the back of the head, and many were and they suspected that many were the Russian prisoners. That region was under German control until Soviet troops took over in 1945. The questions were asked, but there was not enough evidence to answer them, like in terms of like, were they actually Russians or were they Germans? Because obviously it's just skeletons. They couldn't find, they couldn't ID whether they were from the Russian side or from the German side.
Yeah, and you couldn't really do the DNA testing at that stage yet.
No, but what you could do, and what they did, is they found pollen material in the nasal passages. So and your
Yeah.
in the skull and in the nasal passages, which is really interesting, right? Your flesh is gone, but they still could find the pollen.
Yeah.
From 21 skulls, and they examined it, and the pollen test proved that they were actually Russians because of the plants that they found, and the plants were mostly from like the Russian part of land.
Probably just ambrosia and poplar and
Berezka.
and
Birches.
the birches, yeah.
Yeah. So that was really interesting because, like, obviously, there was no flash, but they still managed to. Sorry.
It's very loud.
Yeah, but they still managed to like get the pollen from the nose. Yeah, but the very recent case, it's not really related to plants; it's more related to fungi. But Leongatha, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Mushroom poisoning in Australia, 2023.
I think it's just because mushrooms these days are getting so much traction and so much exposure. Like it's almost becoming a hype. Like the whole mushroom culture about like understanding which you can eat, appreciating mushrooms, seeing how they grow. Like I definitely have seen the surge in books, mushroom kits, just people trying to understand better what can be harvested. And like,
but that's good.
Yeah, it's good. But it used to be like a niche kind of thing. Now I think it's a bit more widespread, and maybe that's why it was like used as a case this time.
Yeah, but I think the reason why they think that it's not a just an incident, just she didn't know something, because there's like she might have tried to do that before, but anyway. So in July 2023, Erin Patterson allegedly served a beef Wellington dish containing Amanita phalloides, commonly known as death caps.
Is it the paganka?
Death caps, yeah. During a family lunch in Leogatha, Victoria. Again, I apologize if I pronounced the place wrong. 3 guests passed away, and 1 survived after a liver transplant. Patterson has been charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder, including previous alleged attempts to poison her ex-husband between 2021 and 2022. So I'm guessing this is where they are like, doesn't seem like you just made a mistake, because you might have tried it before. So she pleaded not guilty, and her trial is scheduled to begin in April 2025, which is now. So yeah, it would be interesting to actually watch that trial and see how it goes.
So yeah, the death caps are very toxic. They have the toxin which is called after them amanithin, but they also can be used to kill cancer cells.
Obviously, processed.
Processed, yes.
Yeah.
Not ingested, but processed.
Yeah. Anyway, let's summarize and sort of summarize how plant forensic botany can help solve crimes. So number 1 that I have is linking people or objects to crime scenes, such as matching the seeds, matching the leaves, like in the Christchurch robbery and the grape.
Linking suspects to locations.
Pretty much, yeah, by using the same material or like a rare pollen that was found on both the
location and the suspect.
Suspect and the location, yeah. Estimating time of death. I've actually read about that before, but what they did, there was one case, I didn't write it down, but there was one case where I don't know if it was...
I mean, even if we go back to our episodes where some of the flowers open up only during the nighttime. There we go.
If the crime happened when it was opened during the nighttime, it kind of gives you a rough idea of when that happened.
When it happened, because you would not have pollen if the flower is not open.
So. Yeah, but also there was another one which was quite cool. They found 2 bodies with sunflower flowers on them, and what the forensic team did.
Let's be specific. Sunflower flowers or sunflower seeds?
No, the flowers.
You do remember that the sunflower head is not a flower.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about, the flower.
Okay.
Yeah. So they found 2 flowers on 2 bodies, and they managed to kind of link the time when the flowers started wilting, because the flowers were fresh when they found them. They managed to time the wilting of the flower, and then that way they could find when the flower was cut, and they estimated that the time of death was very close to that time, because obviously the flowers that were on bodies were fresh, if that makes sense. So they roughly knew when the actual crime happened. And there's also, sometimes there are evidences of, like if they find bodies that are that are buried, then the roots start growing around them. That way they can also find when that happened.
Based on the speed of growth of the
roots.
And
how long that root is and all that. Number 3 is tracing origins of objects and bodies. Again, this is where the DNA testing can help, like we've discussed before. Establishing or disproving alibis. Like, how people claim that they are not there, but Artemisia Pollen says,
just like the guy with the brick.
Yeah, or the guy with the brick, yeah. Determining season or time frame of the events. Again, something similar to what Sasha said. Like, let's say if it was, I don't know, in Japan during the sakura season. Like, if you find sakura pollen.
People use the pollen phytoforensics even for the times when the dinosaurs were, because you can find pollen in amber. And
true.
That's the best carrier. You can find what kind of plants were there, plus what season was that dinosaur preserved in.
And there you go. Yeah. Identifying burial sites and disturbed soils. So, like, experts can spot unnatural plant growth, like a patch of different weeds or regrowth patterns, suggesting that the soil has been disturbed. Which is, I guess, similar to your case with wetland disturbance. Like if somebody actually disturbed the wetland, you'll be able to see that based on plant patterns. And obviously, using plant DNA, as we've discussed before. I don't know why I've got 3 times, but yeah.
So conclusion is, the summary of the conclusion is that plants are the silent witnesses, whether it's a crime, pollution, or the restoration. They're always recording the story, and they will help you to identify the people who are doing wrong. They can help you detect toxins underground. They can help you reveal wetland health. They can help you monitor weather changes. We often overlook vegetation, but it's constantly telling us something. We just have to know how to listen.
Yep, be a plant whisperer. That's what Sasha is saying.
Not be a plant whisperer. Try to see the patterns in the growth, and like it's about analyzing what is happening. You don't have to be the plant whisperer.
It's about being grounded.
It's about being grounded and switched on.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on Two Tipsy Plants. Thanks for getting tipsy with us today and joining in on our plant-loving shenanigans.
This 14.5 wine have definitely made me tipsy.
Yes. We hope we've inspired you to grab a glass of wine and give your leafy friends some extra love.
We also hope we can stand up.
Thank them for being there and for, perhaps if something happens to you, maybe they can tell the story of what happened. If you would like to help our podcast, feel free to follow so you don't miss out on our next wild and tipsy adventure. And also follow us on Instagram. We are the Two Tipsy Sashas on Instagram, all one word. And don't forget to spread the word. Keep it green.
And keep it tipsy. Cheers.
Yes.